Every 12 minutes, there's one death by suicide, and approximately 123 Americans die by suicide every day. Unfortunately, these statistics continue to rise. According to the 2017 National Vital Statistics reports issued by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or the CDC, nearly 47,000 deaths each year are determined to be suicides. This number increased by 24% between 1999 and 2014. With rates growing in both female and male populations between the ages of 10 and 74, suicide is now one of the 10 most common causes of death. It is essential that the government enact mental health sensitivity classes, along with extensive funds for mental health services, in order to build awareness as well as prevent future deaths by suicide.
CDC.
Jan Martel's Life of Pi is the story of a young man who survives a harrowing shipwreck and months in a lifeboat with a large Bengal tiger named Richard Parker. The beginning of the novel covers Pi's youth and later describes the trauma he experiences. Martel demonstrates the trauma Pi endures through the shipwreck and his survival. This triggers emotional and mental instability in Pi. Pi admits that the root of all madness begins with thirst and hunger. He describes a deranged gleam in Richard Parker's eye when he is hungry, and his own personal crazy encounter. I tried once to eat Richard Parker's feces. It happened early on when my system hadn't learned yet to live with hunger, and my imagination was still widely searching for solutions.
Martel 269.
When Pi describes the feeling of being at sea, he describes feeling as though he is the absolute center. To be a castaway is to be a point perpetually at the center of a circle. When you look up, you sometimes wonder if there isn't another one like you, also looking up, also trapped by geometry, also struggling with fear, rage, madness, and apathy. No matter where he is, the distance to the horizon remains the same. However, the phrase perpetually at the center, for Pi, also suggests the loneliness and spiritual abandonment. Pi admits that such extreme and utter isolation for himself and anyone else leads to badness.
Martel 272 to 273.
Along with Pi's literal isolation on the raft, the police who are asking questions to Pi about his traumatic experience towards the end of the novel mirror how it seems many are skeptical and cold towards those with mental illness. This treatment creates a stigma of hate that isolates mentally ill people emotionally and physically, thus causing them to turn to negative outlets to ease their pain. Many people with severe psychiatric disabilities say that the stigma associated with their illness is as distressing as the symptoms themselves. This stigmatism not only prevents them from interacting with others, but may prevent them from seeking the treatment that they need, which in turn exposes them to a greater risk of suicide.
Stobe.
The stigma surrounding mental illness and suicide prevention is what discourages people from discussing these topics openly, often discouraging people from seeking the help they need.
Stobe.
It is apparent that many feel they are unable to talk to anyone about their mental health due to the stigma behind it and the isolation they endure, leading them to self-harm and suicide. Martel covers how Pi's mental instability is caused by the trauma he experiences and the isolation he deals with. This correlates to modern society on how many citizens with mental illnesses are isolated due to the stigma behind mental health and as a result causes self-harm and suicide. In order to decrease the rate of suicide in America, it is important to establish sensitivity towards the mentally ill. By raising awareness, having open discussions, and donating funds for mental health, there is an opportunity for social justice. With one step at a time, there are actions that can be taken to help solve the modern ethical issue at hand. Society needs to have awareness and open conversation of mental illnesses in the hopes to develop sensitivity and prevent suicide.
I want to help people understand that their thoughts don't have to lead them to an attempt. Their thoughts don't have to become their actions when they're suicidal.
It is essential to start conversations, bust the myths, and share the facts with people. Awareness is the first step, and conversation is the second step towards a solution of preventing suicide.
we do not talk openly about what suicide is, who it affects, and how it affects them, if we do not use the word safely, with education and awareness, we run the risk of missing all those people.
When someone is struggling with mental illness, the best way to help is to provide support and encouragement so they do not feel isolated or worthless and are able to seek the help they need and deserve.
Cardi.
I say to you now, the next time you see someone in obvious emotional distress, I beg of you to walk up to that person and say something to the effect of, "Are you okay?" You could quite literally save a life in that moment.
To anybody out there watching this right now, considering it, what do you want them to know?
Stop. Breathe.
Although enacting these protocols would be beneficial in many aspects, it seems that there is a large margin of people who disagree with this claim. The awareness classes and funds towards mental health aid organizations are not worth the cost. The results might not be entirely effective. Along with that, it appears that many parents do not want their children to be exposed to mental illness or suicide and would rather shelter them. The United States spends $113 billion on mental health treatment. That works out to about 5.6% of the national health care spending.
Cliff.
Spending on counseling or medication to treat mental health issues can be expensive. It would take a large toll on the economy to spend more money on mental health aid on top of attempting to enact an awareness class. So at the end of the day, it is too much of a hassle and not worth the nation's time or money when there are no guaranteed results. If the government would budget better, the US would have enough money to go around and fund all the country's needs. This issue specifically is essential because the reason why there is an increase in deaths by suicide is because there are no open conversations. It is necessary to learn about mental health and suicide in order to progress. The donations and curriculum may not seem successful at the beginning, but every step is another step to a solution, and every step is another step towards a brighter future.